As the prophet of esports, I rely on trustworthy and meaningful data every day. Data from our research partner, YouGov, offers the most complete view of esports fans and gamers in the world, providing context to who they are, what they think, the brands they buy, and things they do. YouGov's connected insights and research services inform strategy at every level. If you're a team, a brand, agency, or rights holder, you should be talking with YouGov. Their partners measure and maximize ROI and are telling compelling stories with data. Visit yougov.com/gaming-esports to learn more. I asked the same question on the podcast, so you guys will have to tune into the podcast to hear Ian's answer and Jimmy B's answer. But do you think the doc going and making games is too big of a risk for his brand? And let me just explain. In other words, if Doc makes a movie, okay, and the movie sucks, no one really cares, right? The Doc as a brand survives. The Doc stream survives. He's still the he's still like tremendous champion gamer. His movie, no matter how bad it is, will probably have a cult following. But if he makes a bad game, does he recover from that? Like, can you recover from that? Because he talks all about how he's a great level designer and how, Warzone sucks for this reason and PUBG sucks for that reason. And like, he's very critical of other games. Does he have too much to lose here making games?
I mean, it's a big risk because, first of all, like, just because you play games a lot doesn't necessarily mean you're qualified to make games, right? Now, I'm not saying it doesn't help, right? Like, I think most people who make games also play a lot of games, but it's a very different skill set. And in some sense, I think it's more the skill set of the critic, right? Or the connoisseur than the artist or the artiste, right? So there's a big risk involved. But just to drill in a little, I don't know, Paul, I think he's fine either way, because this is the advantage of this sort of personality and character he is. He's almost a villain, right? Like, I mean, he's not a villain because, you kind of but he sort of plays a foil role to the industry. So in the same way, if the movie he makes is bad, he'd be able to pass it off. Imagine if the game he makes is bad and he's like, oh, Doc pulls it over the industry, making worst game ever. Everyone play my bronze tier game. I think he could play it off. So I think the bigger risk is not to his brand, because anytime I think he pursues a brand extension, obviously there's damage risk, but I think also as an extension, the risk to the core brand is limited. I think the bigger question is just, what's he committing to this? Because what can sink him is finance, resources, and time, right? If he stops focusing on streaming, if he puts a lot of his wealth, if he puts a lot of his connections and network into this and it's a bad game, I think that's the bigger risk for him, an overinvestment of his personal capital into this, rather than, say, his brand itself. Because I think his brand is unique in that it survives bumps.
Now, my guess is he's going to raise outside capital if he hasn't already. And I also think...
Now, wasn't there something in the article, sorry to cut you off, about that it being more like indie games, indie studios type thing?
It's influencer focused. So in other words, he's going to rope in influencers who will help make the games, market the games. They're going to help in all aspect of the life cycle. So he's going to rope in other influencers, not just himself. And that's sort of their angle. This is all sort of influencer built.
Business standpoint, I mean, it's very interesting. I want to give you guys credit, this podcast credit. I think you guys had prophesized this and talked about this, I believe, more in the context of esports teams getting into creating games. But I think this is a very similar concept where it's all vertical integration. You have the most dominant form of marketing right now is Twitch and influencers. We saw that, many examples of that, most famously with Apex Legends, where the influencers really helped build the game. And when I say build the game, I mean in the metaphorical sense, not actually build it. But clearly here you're getting the benefit of vertical integration. I still, if you're going to ask me like quick take, like yes or no, will this work? I'm going to say no, just because, we've seen time and time again, building video games is really hard. It's really hard. So I'm, maybe it's just an obvious answer, but my first take is like, this will not work.
I mean, there's no question that whatever game Doc comes out with, everyone's going to try it at least, right? Assuming it's free to play. Like, there isn't a person on the planet that won't at least try it.
Yeah, and I think, you know, like, even his comments about him having level design experience, like, do have some merit, right? He worked on Advanced Warfare back when that came out, and so he does have some sort of style and, like, fitting violence, speed, and momentum when you think about Advanced Warfare and the jetpacks that they introduced and, like, the kind of increased pace that it introduced. I think it kind of fits his brand too. So maybe in a vertical style, like I'm thinking it's going to be in a building or something. That's what I'm imagining. He keeps mentioning a vertical style of battle royale. So I'm imagining some sort of like horror film where you're in a building, there's people on the 99th floor, people on the first floor, but you have to get to the other building, but the bridge is only on the 50th floor or something, like some crazy nonsense. And with a lot of fast-paced, room-to-room, like hallway designed shooting, which is a lot of what Advanced Warfare was. So I think with that in mind and the rise in popularity of games like Splitgate and like kind of this revival of the arena shooter overall, I think it could have a lot of success, and he's not really risking anything. I think William brought up a really good point that, yeah, he could just play it off at the end of the day. If it's awful, it's kind of the equivalent of having a movie that goes bad. It's like, yeah, I did this thing, kind of sucked, like, whatever, move on, you know? So that's my belief on it. And yeah, like Paul said, I don't think there's going to be a soul out there, especially if it's free to play, who's not going to want to try this sort of concept. Because the concept itself of vertical battle royale, that alone is enough for me to want to play the game. Just, that sounds frightening. So that sounds like fun.
Yeah, I mean, he says that he wants to make what influencers consider to be their dream game, right? So whatever influencers he's partnering with, whatever their dream game sounds like. Lindsay, you wanted to say something on this.
Right. Well, and I was going to add the nuance that I think it depends on how he fails. If he receives a lot of backlash, or if this actually damages his reputation. Because if he just makes a bad game and tries to kind of get it out there and says, you know, it's my first shot at it and I had a lot of fun in this process, I learned a lot, it'll be fine. But if it's like a total shit game with terrible mechanics that never loads, that like a bunch of influencers are like 1,000 kills in 4 minutes, you won't believe this, then like I think everyone's going to hate him. But there's a lot of ways he can fail and save face. It's just if he does fail the wrong way, he will not be able to.
There's also just a history of like many people have made not so great games, even influencers. And like, I mean, I'm thinking, sorry, maybe I'm overly critical, but didn't like the Penny Arcade guys do a game on the Rain-Slick Precipice of Darkness that wasn't that like not particularly good? I don't know. I remember playing it and kind of losing interest. I'm sorry, maybe people liked it but like there's history of this, and even game designers make bad games and it doesn't damage their reputation, right? Like literally, like think of, you know, who's the guy who made Black and White, and who am I thinking of? Jimmy, help me out here.
The DeepMind AI researcher, or like who are you talking about?
No. Is it Sid Meier who did it? No, who did?
I don't think it was Sid Meier, but he did another. Who did Black and White? But I know the guy who did Black and White is a DeepMind researcher. It's the same guy who worked on the AI.
I don't know, but like I'm just thinking like there's plenty of game designers who've been known as auteurs, had bad games, and it hasn't impinged on their reputation. You know, if anything, like we recognize that people make mistakes. So I think he can recover from this. But let's do new topics. I want to do more news because we got a ton of news to get through here.
Yeah, I will just say on the Doc thing that maybe the worst scenario is he makes a great game, tons of people play it, and there are far better players than him at it. Imagine not being the champion at his own game. That, you know, his brand may not survive that. Wen says, first time catching the live stream. It's a bit late in the UK. Is this like an extension of the Beast Burger idea, where a mega influencer partners up with someone and uses the branding on top? So when first of all, thank you for showing up. I know it must be actually very late. So thank you for catching the live stream. But I think yes. I'm curious what you guys think, because just to be clear, in this article, it also mentions that he's partnering with BoE TV, right? And so there is. It's not like the Doc. I don't think the Doc is going to be coding every level and doing, you know, a lot of the day-to-day work on this. Clearly, he's partnering with, you know, a studio. They're hiring a creative director. I'm sure he will have lots of input. So I think it's probably more than just like the doc stamping his name on something, but I don't think it goes as far as like him running this day to day. Do you guys have a different sense?
Hopefully he'll be a little more involved than just stamping his name on a burger. But I think it's a great but I do think it's a great point by Wen, because it's a similar example of someone using, like, an influencer using their influence to sell product. But hopefully, for the doc's sake and probably for this game's sake, hopefully he's going to be more hands-on actually developing it. I doubt Mr. Beast had input into the type of burger and like the toppings and whatnot. But I could be wrong about that.
Probably was like these are burgers I like. But I mean, guys, influencers have been making products for forever. I mean, like, literally, it's like
Beats by Dre.
core of the influencer industry. Think of like how many, makeup influencers have their own makeup lines, or, fashion icons then do clothing. Like, in some sense, this is like esports is a bit late to the party here,
Yeah, I mean, I think a good example is actually Beats by Dre. You look at it and you think about Dr. Dre kind of selling out. He's kind of lost his edge, and he's sold out, and he's made tons of money for subpar headphones that everybody likes because they're marketed well. That's just what they are. And so Dr. Disrespect could have that sort of reputation with this game. And I think the Boom TV integration is actually great, because I could think, like, they obviously pull a ton of stats with Boom TV. And so that sort of integration into a game, especially a battle royale, could be really good. Could be a lot of fun.
For the record, from a business standpoint, if you sell out for like $4 billion or whatever Beats was bought for, $2 billion, I don't remember.
Yeah,
it's the right kind of selling.
No,
out.
100%.
You don't care if people call you a sellout at that.
Yeah.
Point.
But even I
put
guess
a price on
it
it.
was the initial risk that he took to put his name on these headphones with Apple. But yeah, 100%.